That's so cool.
Thanks for joining us. Thanks for water. Thanks for waiting. Yeah, we'll just do it. I'm going to do an introduction. You may wonder, who am I? I wonder that often too. My name is Ryan Sands. I'm an indie comics publisher. So I publish comics with Jillian Tamaki, Eleanor Davis, and last 2 years ago published a book with Rebecca. Based on your outfits and the number of people here, I don't think I have to spend a lot of time on introduction, but I will anyway. So this is my friend Rebecca Sugar. She's a cartoonist, a writer, ukulelist, currently living in LA. She's the author of the comics Pug Davis, Margot and Dread, Don't Cry For Me, I'm Already Dead, and many others. In her free time, she's also a multiple Annie and Emmy-nominated storyboard artist, show creator, behind the groundbreaking television show Steven Universe. I said this last time, but not just the best animated show on television, but probably my favorite television show of all time.
Second. Sorry.
So today we're going to talk about Steven. I have some Steven questions. We'll have time for a Q&A at the end. But we're also going to share some imagery that you may or may not have seen from Rebecca's earlier work and talk about what inspires her, a little bit about fandom, and just anything else that we want to talk about. So please join me in welcoming Rebecca Sugar. I just realized I was going to put a picture of my daughter dressed as Garnet.
Oh.
And I was like, it's not enough.
Oh,
but if you come by, we'll show it to you on Instagram. Yeah.
So I was just trying to show when I was backstage, you were going to come find me, and I was like, I must have a picture of Brian so we know when he shows up, let's inside. And the picture I have of you is you with the shirt of the bubbled cluster, holding a newborn baby. It's just the most lovely.
Well, I don't want to make this about me or get too emotional, but my wife's water broke at 3:30 in the morning, and so I started cleaning the apartment, which is not what you should do. And then we were like, okay, quick, take a shower, get dressed, let's go. And then I put on that shirt because I wanted to start things off on a very positive note. Okay, so Rebecca and I, we've been friends for a while, but we did another one of these kind of talking things a couple of years ago, and then when I knew we were doing this today, I was like, oh crap, I already asked all my good questions. But that was 2 years ago, and I think a lot has happened in the show, in your personal life, so we'll just kind of dig in. But I wanted to start by asking, what is your life like currently now? Specifically related to the show. Not like what do you have for breakfast. But, I know some folks have heard that there's a movie coming, and I know personally that you're one of the busiest, hardest working people I know. So can you talk to us a little bit about how do your days and weeks go on your work?
Well, right now, I'm doing a mix of movie and show. So I'm always jumping from episode to episode. At any given time, we're working on 10 or 15 episodes at the same time. We're doing music on one, we're writing the premise for another, we're doing a board pitch for another, we're doing design for 2 others. Everything overlaps. So now the movie is in the mix there too, and it's really exciting. The schedule is let's talk about schedules and dry. It's it's a little different because it's just a very different project, and so I'm sort of rolling with it. I've tried to learn to take things as they come because you're always punished if you try to plan ahead. I mean, everything is incredibly planned ahead, but on the day-to-day, there's always 3 or 4 emergencies that happen that you have to run and solve, or a new email about a new idea. Around Comic-Con time, there becomes the added planning for Comic-Con, so that jumps in. Yeah, it's every day is many things that are usually all different things, and always for different reasons. The interesting about how the sausage is made is that In terms of it being a sausage, it's like if the sausage factory had to make a different sausage every time a sausage came out. There's no one sausage formula for us. We have to reinvent the sausage every single time. And so every 11-minute sausage is completely different.
Based on artisanal whatever, it's on, you charge a lot for the sausage.
But usually there'll be more than one of that single flavor.
Well, one thing I want to talk about with the Adventure Time just wrapped up. So now you're kind of like one of the, I don't know if you feel like it, one of the old timers there.
Oh yeah, I really feel. It's almost been 10 years since I wrote my first song for TV for Cartoon Network.
Wow.
It feels like yesterday.
Yeah, that's wild. Can you talk a little bit about sort of what you learned from Adventure Time? I guess especially from the early days about. I think one of the things people love about Adventure Time and about Steven is the way that the writers are empowered to really tell their own stories, to follow their own impulses. So can you talk a little bit about sort of, what you learned from Adventure Time, and then maybe a little bit about the experience going back to help wrap it up?
Adventure Time taught me that I could do personal work in a commercial animated show. We were really encouraged to do things that were personal and interesting and not like other shows. Honestly, writing for a character like Marceline, like even my personal work was often not as personal as the stuff I'd be writing for her, just because that was what Penn and Adam and Pat were interested in. And the more like independent comics, I thought I'll do independent comics on the side and I'll take a commercial animation job because I love both these things, but they're going to be different. And they wanted it to feel like independent comics. And even my independent comics were a little goofier and stickier than they wanted Adventure Time to feel, so I was really digging deep. Same with the music. I had started out trying to write, when I did It Came from the Night, which was the first episode that I boarded and wrote for.
That was an audio, that was a clapping cue, but no.
I started out writing these big flashy musical numbers because that's the kind of stuff that I like, and then Penn came in and was like, let's just have this be a scene between these two people, and it just got so much smaller and more intimate. And that interest that they had in these small, intimate moments. I remember one of the things I loved is, they did a thing once where Finn touched his face, and when he took his hand away, it left a little imprint, like a little pink mark that faded off. That's really hard to do. That means there's a design for the pink spot on his face. There's a director has to time the time it takes for the pressed mark to fade off, just for this little moment of like, there's a pressure that happened when he put his hand to his face. That was fascinating to me. Who was doing something like that? For TV animation, and TV animation, you don't have a lot of time to put subtlety in. So that really taught me you can do something subtle in television animation. I don't know, I suppose maybe now, early on, when season 1 was coming out for Adventure Time, people didn't think Adventure Time and subtle. Maybe now that's different. Maybe they've gotten you can all tell me if that's how we felt inside, like the level of subtlety we were encouraged to bring, and these little specific moments. That was so unusual, and I just fell in love with that, and I wanted to keep it going.
And I guess for your own writers, you have the same sort of, how do you make it clear to them that they're free to explore those things? Is it the way you do critiques, or is it just you give them a pep talk every Monday, or because you're a leader of a team, right? Like in many ways, you're like a manager of a team.
Yeah, I try to keep it very flexible. A lot of times we'll come up with ideas in the room of the pitch. Once we see a pitch and we all get excited about something, we'll start pitching jokes on it. I really want everyone to be involved in every episode, which is a little different. With Adventure Time, we really, the tone can be so different from episode to episode that like a Jesse episode or Tom episode will feel nothing like maybe an Adam episode. But on Steven, I think it's a little more trying to capture the energy of us being together in the room. And what I'll do is, because there's so much continuity, I make charts that basically say, here's what's important to me to happen in this episode, this episode, this episode, this episode, this is why this is happening sort of across for a season length, so that even if we get excited about something, we'll know kind of a framework where it's like this still has to eventually arrive at this point. And if people don't like that point, we can all talk about why. We can, you know, try and figure out, because sometimes that is the most exciting thing, is when something is rubbing everybody the wrong way. Because you know that there's something, whatever is like getting under your skin, like there's something there, like it's going to be difficult to do this right, but what is doing this right? Why is this wrong? Like that whole conversation is always, some of, I think, our most interesting ideas have come from these things that are like, we want some aspect of this, but what is the part that's holding us back from actually getting there? And
is that sometimes because like someone suggests something you or the team thinks like this character wouldn't do that or wouldn't say that, or are you how protective are you, I guess, of like you know these characters better than anyone, of course, but then the writers have their own ideas about what these characters are and how they've changed over time. So how do you fight that like tension, or do you sometimes say, no, listen, Pearl would never say that, and we can't do that? This episode?
I mean, everything is super up in the air.
Okay.
Even as we're boarding, things are still subject to change. Like nothing is really locked in until the animatic is put together and we, you know, and we lock it and we send it off to be animated. We're still changing lines like up until the last second often. You know, so these conversations, like they start really macro and then they become really micro. So it'll be like, you know, early on, it's not so much like, would Pearl ever say this line? It'll be like, what are we saying with this? Like, what do we mean by this? Like, what, you know, what is left for this character to discover about themselves, and is this supporting them discovering that? Like, it's really broad. And then as we get into premises and outlines, we're tying down the details. Where are they? You know, what is the interesting way to, what event can show you that they're making this progress? Like, and then when we get to board stage, it'll be like, I think that's when we get like, I think Pearl would make a face like this. I think that Amethyst would say a line like this. Often it'll be, you know, in a room with many of us in it, and let's see, I do with Ian Jones Cordy, who does the show OK KO, ran Stephen with me for some time, and he says I do a thing, and he would call it like Rebecca Ing, which is where I like stand at the wall staring at a couple of lines, furiously writing and rewriting some new version of that line, usually for a really, really long time, until I put a post-it on the wall, and then I just pitch the line to everybody, and then I just see if they laugh at it or not. And if they do, then I'm like, all right, that's what it is. And if they don't, I just go right, we just do round 2, and I do it again.
Those 2 minutes, everyone silently like.
I hope not. I try not to take too long.
No.
Sometimes people will just chat, and I'll try and keep going.
There's a big like smoke cloud. We're gonna make coffee.
It really is cool. It's a post-it cloud. Often I'll like by the end of some of these, I'll be tracking post-its around the room on my shoes and on my clothes. Like having pull post-its off of me. I feel I'm sorry to the production staff because they'll come into the conference room and it's just littered with crumpled up post-its that I didn't like, and I just like threw around. Which sometimes I am whisked away too fast to pick them up and throw them away. But
it means you're driving.
Some of them will find later, and they'll have some cryptic thing written on them, and we'll try and figure out what it was. There's one that says, somebody has to paint somebody's nails black. Which got picked up and stuck on the wall, and it's still there. I think it was about young Greg.
Oh, okay.
I was like, but it didn't happen.
Yeah.
But I guess we have to do it eventually.
Well, we talked 2 years ago. We talked in between them, but we talked in public 2 years ago, and you were reading notes off your phone, some poetry and some notes, and that was like the joke, like which of these are notes and which are poetry, and I saw people in the comments being like, she was talking about this scene in episode blah.
Yes.
And they're like, that's the part of it mentioned the stoplight, it has to be that.
It was for the last one out of your city,
right?
They were right. That wouldn't be out for like probably a year.
It was
well, because I was working on it probably right then.
Yeah, I think so, yeah. So, for some Has everyone caught up with Steven? Are you guys watching?
Yeah.
I mean, the last 10, 15 episodes, it really feels like you guys are cashing in on some big pieces of the story that have been sort of planted and painted for many years. There's those quartz mysteries, the diamonds. I'm not going to say anything, but you know, I'm not going to dig into spoilers, but there have been some major things that you landed, I think, very successfully, very emotionally powerful. How do you feel when you reveal a big thing that you've had in your back pocket for a long time, like the nature of Garnet earlier in the seasons, and now we have big things? Like, do you feel relieved, or do you feel like, oh crap, I wasted, or do you feel sad when it's gone because now you can play with it?
Oh no, it's a huge relief.
I mean, we like it too, yeah.
Up until once it's out, if it gets out and it managed to not leak, and then we get to the day and everybody sees it, that's like, and then it's great. It's great. We got to Garnet. Nobody knew till it happened. That was amazing. And then the next one was like Peridot being small, which some people figured out. But because we picked screen caps for the episodes, right. And when we're finishing episodes way before anything near them have aired, sure. So like long in advance. So there was a big stretch where we were doing all the we called it the barn arc at the time, like all the stuff with Peridot's arc, where she's small, but we had to pick screen caps that she wouldn't be in, because I was like, what if they put these, we don't know when they're going to put these out, and if they put them out before you see her, and it was really hard to find an image for these Peridot episodes without Peridot in it, also they're not in the episode.
Have you ever made fake ones, like in the Avengers Infinity War, you see Hulk running, and that was fake, apparently,
like drawing something from scratch.
Yeah.
There is.
Do you do like psych ops like that to try to? Are you messing with them? Are you ever?
I feel like I shouldn't answer.
Okay.
I will say sometimes we'll like take elements of an image, like if one character is smiling while the other one's talking and it's a strange in between, we'll like freeze half the frame.
I see.
That's really dry. But that's a chunk of my day. It's like choosing screen caps from episodes and making sure that they look good.
So I had a feeling, I don't feel bad now talking about what's happened recently, but I promise I won't talk about the last couple episodes. But we saw a couple major things happen that I had been waiting for a long time, and was like, oh my god, we know everything. Like, cat's out of the bag on almost all the big questions. And then that night later, I was like, oh no, wait, there's so much stuff I'm still wondering about. But I wanted to ask, like, did you always have a concrete ending in mind? And this isn't a spoiler, tell me the story arc thing, but I guess what I'm really asking is, some shows are made to run forever. Like, you have a character dynamic like The Simpsons, and you literally, or The Seinfeld maybe, and you could just run it forever. And other things, you never know when it will end, but you have a general sense of where the characters will end up. Which side of that is the show for you? And then I guess the second question is, did you ever get pressure to make it a certain kind of show? And has anything major changed? That's like 6 questions. I'm sorry.
Like all big questions too. I always had a sort of ending theme in mind, an ending in mind, but it has evolved a lot as we've worked on it.
Oh wow.
I can't really say.
No, you don't have to. I'm not asking about plot points. It's more just like how this story developed. Yeah.
We should do maybe a follow-up when the next ones are out. But
what the hell does that mean? Okay, cool.
One of the most sort of pivotal things came out of like a big writing day, writer's room discussion of just a thing that was just bothering all of us for years. And this is, that's why it's my favorite thing, is like when we manage to aikido the biggest problem into the biggest solution, that has so much power to me. And it comes from, that's the stuff that really comes from the team and the room and just navigating.
I put up a picture of myself. I don't know what Rebecca's going to say. I swear, I'm just messing with her because we're I will say last time we talked, I implied something and everyone laughed, and then it wasn't what happened, so don't listen to me.
In terms of being pressured to make it a different kind of show,
Right, by the network or by...
Well, sure.
Yeah.
And I think every show feels a lot of pressure. The interesting thing is that everything, for television, everything has been changing. Like, we've been on this churning sea of, like, what is television, what is children's television, what is cable television, do people watch TV? in this day and age. And continuity is actually one of the most difficult and controversial things to do.
Right.
Because a lot of these cartoons are designed to rerun infinitely in any order everywhere across the world. Having a show with an ongoing story is very difficult to air. But then we would also, there would be moments where that was an exciting possibility. Like around the time we were doing the Peridot arc, there was an excitement for like an 8-episode continued storyline, and then we did across several shows. Stakes was like that too. And, when I was working on Adventure Time, the continuity was very, very subtle, and that was something that we essentially were doing a little bit secret. And I'm really glad, like especially with a lot of these later episodes, it's a really interesting, fun challenge to do stuff that is not particularly linear. I really like it. It's really hard to make a really satisfying self-contained story, and what we try to do is make sure that the characters are learning and changing so that even if when the stories are self-contained, they've learned or grown in a way that supports the story that comes next. If they can do both things, I'm really proud of those episodes that can work out both ways. Cliffhangers are fun though.
Yeah, they're fun for us too. Well, I want to make sure, I have so many things to ask about, but one thing I want to talk about was related to the last time we talked, which was, since then I became a dad, and you said something of a daughter, and you said something really amazing to me that I've actually circled back to a lot. I won't read the whole thing, but we were talking about representations of queer identity and relationships in television generally and on kids' shows, and you said, I think if you wait to tell queer youth that it matters how you feel, how they feel, and that they're even a person, it's going to be too late. You have to talk about it to be what it is, to let it be what it is and gets to be for everyone. I think about fairy tales and Disney movies and the idea that love is something that's always discussed with children. And I think there's this idea that, we should represent queer characters that are adults because there are adults that are queer, and you should know that's something that happens in the adult world. This comes up to me for me a lot as a parent, and I think in the 2 years since we talked, a lot has changed. And I think it's wrong to say, your comments were very prescient, because you were directly related and had an impact on this, I think, cultural change that happened in kids' television. And since then we've had, and I think other shows are starting to, beyond afraid to acknowledge that queer people exist, and oh my god, queer children exist as well. So I just wanted to check in 2 years later and ask you sort of how things have changed and how you felt about the wedding episode, or anything you'd want to say.
I mean, there's so much. I think since we talked last, I have been able to speak about this so much more. And I wasn't, when we spoke at MoCA, I was not out. And being able to talk about why this matters to me personally has helped a great deal. But also just because we were being discouraged from having the characters be openly LGBTQ+, because we were being discouraged from that, I also was not really in a position to say that I was bisexual. And by 2016, I couldn't function anymore. I had to talk about why this was important. And hearing these concepts come to me directly, hearing these notes come to me directly, really feeling the pressure that being someone in kids entertainment and also making something that's the default. And it's not a default. And I want this to shift, please. Satisfied with it, but getting it done anyway and be ready to jump to the next thing. That is a skill to learn and build up. Like, oh, I'm not 100% happy with this, but I've got to get it done and out, and then I'll make the next thing, and then I'll be more happy with that thing. You'll never be happy. I'm just telling you in advance. Okay, no.
No, I get it.
You know, with the project and that that's old me. You'll be happy.
Yeah, I know.
Happiness. Look at those things and accept those things and move on. That's not planned at the beginning. That's just what was going on in reality. And when I look at Steven, it's really moving, and I think Steven is a lot more personal than my personal work.
Okay, with fandom, I always feel like they respond very strongly to like the romantic aspects of the story or your work. And I mean, I don't read a lot of fanfics, but I get the impression there's like a lot of focuses a lot on that. And you know, even if they don't, like when you showed like the wedding photo, everyone's like, oh, so like you know, you kind of go in knowing that's what people respond to, but like you don't make the entire show like Steven and Connie go on a date. Like that's it's scattered throughout. So I guess I was wondering how you decide how much to focus on the romantic aspects when you know that that's what the fans will respond really strongly to.
Well, the show is so much about love, and the core of it is really my relationship with my brother, and that sibling love and best friend love, I think, is primary in the show for me. But we really want to explore relationships, and romantic relationships certainly have to be a part of that exploration. So I try to incorporate it when it makes sense for the characters. I mean, Ruby and Sapphire and Garnet, I think, are the pillar of romantic love as expressed through the show. And there are things I want to say about romantic love with them that I haven't really seen in cartoons, especially characters that have been in a relationship for an extremely long time and know each other really well. One of the things I was really excited about the wedding was that I don't know if I've ever seen two cartoon characters who've been dating for an extended amount of time and made a choice to get married, then get married. Usually it just sort of happens because it's like how you win or something. And, but they talk about it. They have to spend time apart in order to be a little healthier and come back together and actually have a discussion about, is this something that we want to do? And then they do it. I really wanted to see that kind of romantic relationship, one that wasn't easy. Like, they struggle. You see them break up and get back together. That can happen. And I think if you're a kid watching cartoon romance, you might think that nobody ever fights, or that I mean, what even happens after a lot of these characters get married? Like, you don't know how the relationship turns out. Hopefully it stays good between, you know, Ariel and the prince or whatever, I'm sure. With people, because maybe you said it wrong or you stumbled on the line. So like, it's, you know, but it's no problem if when you step back, you just kept moving forward. So yeah, just don't stop. Please don't stop.